my connection to Sam, I think in the beginning, why he was even interested in sitting down with me was he'd read Moneyball when he was 13 years old.
I was going to ask.
And it completely confirms his approach to life, which is, he's this kid who's unendowed with a normal range of human feeling. And he substitutes emotion and feeling for emotion and feeling, sort of mathematical calculation to make every decision in his life, every decision. I mean, when he gets older, like whether to get married and have kids, it's an expected value calculation. He's sort of taking the idea at the heart of Moneyball, that experience doesn't matter, that a nerd with a computer can actually make better decisions about baseball players than some guy who played for 20 years. He's sort of taking that to an extreme and taking it out into the world and applying it to everything. And it becomes preposterous. He takes it to, just like this Moneyball on steroids gone wrong. That phenomenon, the Moneyball phenomenon, was in a way, I think, a bridge for him, his mind into the world, into real world problems that he might otherwise think he has no ability to solve or even think about.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating, Michael. Yeah. And it's funny because the conversation around your book by people, I think, who largely did not read the book, it was wrong. Not least because there are many indicting stories and bits of reporting in your book about Sam. But I feel like what you just explained is a far more interesting way that you are connected to the story. And I ask you this now in terms of the pendulum of our willingness to trust quants and nerds versus the old scouts who felt evicted from this conversation by Moneyball. How do you grade how we have swung in that direction?
You put it well. The nerds evict the scouts. The scouts are still around, but their status is lower than it was. And the nerds all of a sudden have a place at the head of the table. And Sam was very oddly doing the same thing in other sectors of the economy. Mm. He didn't let anybody over the age of 35 into his company. So the nerd was evicting the old experienced people in finance, basically, or political analysis. He was meddling in American politics. It was him and three 28-year-olds thinking about how you manipulate a Republican primary, using analytics as sort of their touchstone. So the moneyballing of everything, it's a phenomenon of the last 20 years, right?
No doubt.
And Sam is just like taking it to an extreme. What do I think about this? It bothers me a little. This is the truth. And it may bother me for unintelligent reasons. What bothered me at the time when I wrote Moneyball was that there were a club of people who were insensible to new ideas and new approaches. And so they just shut out this other way of thinking about the problem and were smug in their ability to make their own judgments. I thought that was bad. This kind of clubby approach to thinking about the world or thinking about problems or dealing with uncertainty. We've replaced one smug club with another smug club. It's just the smug club are, these nerds. And
yes.
They're undeniably better at putting together a baseball team than the old smug club. It is a better way of thinking about the problem. But it is not a perfect way of thinking about the problem. And I think whenever you create the smug club, what you do is you shut out other ways of thinking about the problem, things that are threatening or alien to you.
Yeah. It pains me to say this as somebody who, and again, full disclosure here, my favorite sports book of all time is Moneyball. I'm somebody who did reporting on the Philadelphia 76ers and Sam Hinkie and quoted "trust the process" at ESPN in a way that then became a meme. And what I'm hearing you say now, Michael, is the problem of being too trusting of your process.
Intellectual monoculture.
Yes.
Intellectual groupthink. We know that there isn't a different way to think about this problem. I think the smartest of the people who are, at the vanguard of Moneyball are aware of this.
I agree.
But there is we were talking about the pendulum swinging, and I just have felt I've sensed it swinging too far in the other direction. And Sam Bankman-Fried is oddly an example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also just the other dimension of this, just to put the final sort of cherry on top of this introspective Sunday, is the question of how the audience, how, by the way, journalists, authors, the public, how we trust the quant now too. And there is the wisdom of not just the people inside the room where it happens, trusting their process in a monoculturally blinkered way, but also now the outsiders assuming that that is where the credibility is with the people who are the most fluent in numbers to the exclusion of the experience, the old scouts, the old farts that we evicted.
Here's the problem. Where you allow your mind to come to rest. That someone once said, an explanation is where the mind comes to rest. And the mind used to come to rest with, oh, Bill Parcells knows what he's doing on defense. We're doing this because Parcells knows defense. Or we know the player is good because this scout says he's good. Without examining the mechanisms by which this judgment is rendered. And my point, and the point on Moneyball, is don't allow your mind to come to rest.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, this is the grand irony of this story, Michael.
Yes.
I just think about this, and I totally understand the multiplicity of interpretations here. My point is about the underrated aspect to which Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX not only embodied the sequel to Moneyball. Yep. However, unconsciously, this was happening.
I was very aware of this. The
sequel to Moneyball, while also being a case study in how domestically sports washing also exists. The use of sports to launder the moral reprehensibility of the people behind the doors that are now locked to the outsiders.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yes. If you can connect it up to sports, people are blind to everything else. This is absolutely true. It legitimizes. Sports is used to legitimize great fortunes in this country. That you buy a sports team and you become your money becomes a different kind of money.
Yes,
it's one of the reasons people buy sports teams, whether they're conscious of it or not. They want however they made this pile of money. They might have made it by raping middle-class investors in the stock market, but now they're the owner of some franchise and people see them differently and like them more.
Not merely a mortgage lender, now the owner of your favorite childhood obsession.
That's right. And what I loved about Sam Bankman-Fried as a character was that he was figuring all this out as if no one had ever thought any of these thoughts before. He was figuring out all by himself the role of sports in the American imagination. And when you approach life this way, your working assumption is nobody knows what they're talking about. Especially older people have no idea. You only trust your friends with their computers and their analytics. You end up first making some wild errors, but second sort of stumbling upon cliches that everybody who's been in this world and paid attention to it understand. But third, sometimes you get these blazing insights. Like you actually do get this fresh look at a thing.
Totally.
And the way he parsed sports generated, I never heard anybody say, oh, the stadium matters, the player doesn't matter. I never heard anybody say Tom Brady is not just a different by degree than Dak Prescott. It's like a different species. They figured this stuff out. It was interesting to hear it.